So for the homework, who has finished it? You have finished, right?
I have reached some.
And you have also done. Can you post the link in Slack channel? Can you post it again? Okay. So here you are showing the repo and then its commits, right? And if I search for something else, then okay, good.
Is it GitHub? Should I post the website?
This is the page, right?
Yeah, I did something.
I post the website.
So you are showing just 2 contributors? Oh no, everything. Okay. Nice. So this is what you are supposed to make. That if you search something, then you have to list all the repos, and then if I click on one repo, then you have to show all the contributors or commits and something related to that repository. Yeah, you also did the same thing. Yeah. Where did it go?
The one I did was one for the GIF.
What did you do here? This is from last week, right?
Yeah.
What we did in the class.
Yeah. If you can unblock from it.
What?
There is a red side. But I wanted to be like when I type 2.
Okay, so you are facing defaults. Okay, I will implement part of the homework so that everyone can understand what we were supposed to do. So here it says that create a new website with external JS file.
Are you going to check our homework and give us some feedback?
So I will send the feedback during the week.
Okay.
The weeks are also confusing us. I see some having week 6.
What?
Weeks. The week we are doing. The week. I see put week 5.
You can put anything. So anyway, so it says that create a new website with external JS file. I will just add something here. open the index. So see that it's working, that I have an index HTML and it refers to this script and this is getting loaded. So step 1 is done, create new website. Then I have to add a button, and when it's clicked it should log that you have clicked me. So we can add a button here. Button 1. And how can we get the button from the document?
Very simple.
And here I can use the CSS query selector. Here I put button 1 btn1, so I can use hash btn1 to select that. And it says that when you click on the button, then it should say that console, it should say you clicked me. So dot add event listener click. Just copy this. And if I click here, it should say you click me. So
How can we stop it like just one time?
what?
Like just the first click to
If you want to do that, then you have to put a condition that and then if not clicked, then set clicked is equal to true and then log it. So you can use a if statement to check. So by default clicked will be false when the page is loaded, and if you click for the first time, then this will be true, not clicked is true, and then it will set click to true and log this to console. And when you click next time, this is already true, so it will not log again. But then you have to create a function which will fetch from GitHub API, and for this you can check this Stack Overflow post. So how many of you do homework step by step? You just read everything and start writing code for everything at once.
No, I followed this step, but maybe something.
Okay. So you have to define a function which will fetch from GitHub API. So it can be a URL like this. If you remember, we defined this function in the last class. It was this function. Do you remember? So do I need to explain it again? Do you have questions, or can I use it?
Yeah.
So here we have defined a function which takes two arguments. First one is URL and second one is a callback function. So inside the function we create a new XML HTTP request or AJAX request, and so there are 4 steps when you want to send a AJAX request using pure JavaScript. First you need to create an instance of this. Then you need to add an event listener that when the response has been received, when the page has loaded or URL has been loaded, what you want to do. And then you have to open the AJAX request. You have to define the HTTP verb. Here we are using get and the URL, and then you send the request. So here after the request has been loaded, we will parse the JSON data and call this function whatever was given here. So to use this function, for example, if I want to use this, it can be like fetch JSON data URL and it will get the data console.log. So this is how we use this function. Here I am defining something called anonymous function. So you can do it like this, or you can name it on GitHub data load. So there are two ways to use it. So here I am calling this function and it gives me 30 repos. Display the data you get from the GitHub API on your web page. So this looks very similar to last week's assignment, week 4 anyway. This is, we had to do week 6, right? Last week we were working on week 6.
No, the one you left last week.
This was the homework. Okay.
Until the 7th,
Yeah.
It's same till here.
until
Right?
6, it's like this.
Okay. So then you have to display the data which you get from the, so display GitHub. Good. So I created a unordered list here and I gave it one ID and I'm accessing it using document.querySelector. So if I want to check if it works or not, I can just log it. It works, right?
Can we still use can we still use get element by element?
Yes, but this is a better way to do it.
That's calls your the URL that you have put in.
Yes.
They do. I mean, if we I mean, style on CSS, something like about anything like the pattern. So the page link, can we put there as well? So,
What can I?
for example, about the pattern, if we style most of the things like in CSS,
Yeah.
so it comes like the link on top. So can we put there instead of the
Instead of putting it in the
yeah.
JavaScript file.
Yeah.
So
The page link, I mean. So when you click, so it has to come. Or we cannot do that.
So this is a variable, right?
Okay.
So I can go and put it manually, but what I'm going to do is that when you call this URL, you get a list of 30 repos. So I'm going to show all of them. So for so we know that it's going to be repos, right? Every object is a repo, so we can choose a better name here.
So it means that we can use bot name repositories and data. So we can use bot subclass like which one you use.
So whatever you can use any variable name, but it's better to use a meaningful one.
Oh.
li.innerHTML.
The point with good namings is also that when another developer comes in, he can immediately figure out what's your intention.
So when I load the page, it by default load all the repos, right? Now the homework says that now link the two together. When you click the button, then it should get the GitHub data. Right now it's fetching it by default. So we had this thing, right? So if I just put this code here, what will happen? It will fetch only when you click the button. So every time you click, it will go and fetch and so add it to the list. So now it does not show anything, but if you click the button, it will fetch. If you click again, it will fetch again and it's repeat. It again puts Angular and everything. So if I keep clicking, it will keep adding here. So the next question is how to not show duplicates.
So like there is remove event listener, then we have to load the same function we used, but it didn't work.
There is a much better way that you can just say inner HTML equals empty string. Then it will remove all the children from down. So when you click here, this is the UL, right? And there are some li elements inside this. And if I click again, new ones are added here. If you want to remove everything inside this, whatever is inside this, So you can say inner HTML equals empty string. It will go and remove everything from here. So that's a simpler solution, and we will talk about removing the event listener and that. Okay, so what you are saying is that once you have clicked, I will not let you load again. Right? Once you have clicked, I have loaded everything, and after the event has been completed, I will remove the event listener. So even if you click, nothing is happening. But that's not what we want. We want it to re-render the list, but it should not have duplicates. There is one benefit when you do the assignment step by step, is that now I know that my code is working till that step. So, but what I saw when I was looking at the code at like some of your at the homework written by some of you, that you have written a lot of lines and there are some mistakes at 3-4 different places. It means that you kept writing the code, and once you are like, okay, I have implemented these many features, let me test in the browser, and it was not working, then you are getting frustrated, right? So instead of doing that, you should, every time you make a change, you should reload the page and see if it's working or not. And if it's not working, remove that line and try to find out what is the correct way to do it. If you cannot find the correct way to do it, then you can ask questions. So if you ask small questions, then it's much easier to answer. But if you post 100 lines of code, and then it becomes difficult to look at the problem and answer it in 5 minutes. So if you ask like on a working day during work hours, if someone is at work, they may not answer your question because it will take them more than 2 minutes to answer your question. So if you want help, please write code step by step.
I have a question about it. So let's when you click me. So when you click, it shows, I mean, all the line.
Yeah.
Elements. So when we click again, so it should hide. What we should do, like it should hide all elements. So like when we click, it shows.
Yeah.
So when we click again, so it should hide.
Mm.
Like showing line.
You can.
How we can?
Okay, I will.
It's like fake talk.
Yeah.
You mean?
So you can do this. Yeah. You can do something like this.
Display.
But he said once he clicks again though.
Yeah, but I know, but I don't want to change whole code just for that. But it does not work.
Should be still no holds like the string.
None?
No, like the string.
Yes.
Click the try none.
Could easily do it with a true false flag depending on if it's clicked or not, and then
Yeah.
hide the interaction.
So it has display property. Where is it? It's an empty string.
Right none, I guess.
Yeah. So I am doing it in a set timeout, but you can have a variable and then switch it.
It's also because the value didn't change
Yeah.
when it was still an empty string, so it couldn't trigger the
Yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah.
I guess.
Yes. Anyway, so we are done till this step, and then what is the next one? Make a function which takes a single argument. The function should make an XML HTTP request to this URL where the search term will be the argument. This argument will be the input the user has given. So make sure that when the user clicks the button, you call this function with the argument. So we need to define a new function which will take a search string and then it will try to search all the repos for that search string. So if you go to this URL and if I type react, it has total 4 results, right? Here you can see the number of results, and if I type Java, it has 2. If I type XYZ, it has no result. So
Extra visitors. Hi. It's pleasure. Yeah, I'll add it. What's this guy's? Sorry for the interruption. Jacob might be teaching in a couple of weeks, so we'll check it out today. Do you mind if we add another table? Yeah. One more table? One more chair?
Oh, one more chair.
One comfortable one?
Fine, thank you.
I have created a new function here. It takes one argument, query string, and then it adds that query to this URL, and then it will make a AJAX request, and once you have the data, it will log the data. Okay. So I will just search it, call it using React. So here you see that there are 4 repos with name React, right? And if I call it with something else, Java, then you have JavaScript and JavaScript 3. So this function is working. So, and I have just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code because I am using this function which we defined earlier, right? And here I am testing this function without adding it with any event listener or anything. So first I need to know if my code is working or not, and if I am sure that my code is working, then I can link it with some button click or something else. Yes?
I see you've written fetch JSON data in another function, but it is able to communicate with it first.
What?
You've written the fetch JSON data
Yes.
in another function.
Yes.
I remember last time you said when a function is like closed, it's not able to access data outside of.
So this variable request You are saying that I am able to access this data.
Yeah.
So
You
this
are
is
using fetch JSON data from the
Yeah.
previous function.
yes.
But I think it is communicating. They are communicating together. I don't know how.
You are talking about scope, that how am I able to access this data variable here, right?
You say that you are using the first function up. If you can scroll up.
1 minute. So yes.
Yeah, that function you wrote first. You're saying you're using that one
Yes.
to get data.
Yes.
I don't know how it is communicating with the other one, which is like also another function crossed. The search
So
is
when you
one.
call this function,
Yeah.
then inside this function,
Inside that function, you're using another function.
so you can call a function inside another function. So it can be very nested.
The thing is, because the other function is like declared outside of this function,
Yeah.
that creates it in the global scope. So basically, every other function in their body, they can refer to that function because they see it. But if you declare a function inside of another function, you might not be able to call it in the global one. So the ones that are defined first, kind of like on the global scope, are accessible in the body of other functions. So that's why this one can refer to the other one and use it.
Yes. So this function already knows about these three things, that there is a JSON data function, there is a constant URL, then there is display GitHub repos. So these are defined on the same level as this function. So when this function looks for variables, it will look for all the variables inside its own definition and if inside its own scope. So like this URL is inside this. So but this URL is in the global scope. This function is in the global scope. So when you say fetch JSON data, it will find that function and call it.
The last time we said that you shouldn't use variables which reside in other scopes. That's different.
Yeah, the variables are the private things. We cannot access directly.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
The other functions. But in that case, there is a function.
We are just calling a method.
Calling the function, and all the properties are coming in.
That's good because it's just reusing code. Otherwise, you will repeat code.
That is actually one of the main functions of a function, is that you're supposed to reuse it or define functions that are reusable in other places to minimize repeating yourself and reuse of code. Also, if you want to change it, you know where to go to change functionality because it's in a function.
Okay. So we can call it on search complete. So when I call this search GitHub repos with search query Java, it goes to this URL and then it makes the API call and then finally you have this result. Okay. So suppose we wanted to make this call when the button was clicked. Then how to do that? I can just go and do this, right? So now when you click the button, it will log that you clicked me and it will go and search for all the repos which have Java in the name and then it will show on the console. So it works, right? But the difference between this one and the previous one is that here the results are inside items property. So if I have to use this method, display GitHub repo, it expects an array of repo objects, right? Here we are expecting it to be an array, but what we get from the API is an object. It has three different properties: total, count, incomplete results, and items. And items is the list of array. So if I log data.items, then we will have the array here. And it's same as what you were getting previously when you were fetching this URL. All the objects have same property. So I can just call this display GitHub repos here. And if I change it to React, it will search for React and show everything. Questions? Make sense, Isaac?
Yeah, that's
So you see, I defined a function which was taking a list of repos and it was trying to render it. I am just reusing that code. No response. Okay. So now we need to just implement one more thing, that instead of hard coding the search query, if we have to get it from the user. If you have to get it from the user, then what do you need to do?
Inbox in not text box
Input like text name equals something. I just give it an ID. Search input. So you can type something and you can click the button. So dot query selector search input. It works, right? In the last class you learned that you can use input and then you can access its value by input.value. So if I just do this, then we have a search.
works.
It works. Okay. Do you want me to implement other parts also? So there is one more step, 8, 9. Okay. Questions?
Can implement other parts.
Now do you understand what mistakes you are making? What? I'm not doing this for myself. I mean,
It's for us to correct the mistakes.
so it's like less than 50 lines of code and you have a working search. So I used this function from the last class, and then on the UI we have 3 elements: input, button and UL. And when you click the button, it takes the value of the input and it calls this function using that input, and here I'm making the API call, and when I get the data, I'm trying to render everything inside the UL. That's what you have to do. So the next requirement is that when you click on one of the search results, like if I click on React, then it should show me everything about that repo. It says that make all the repos link to their own GitHub page, and this. So to make a link, what do you need to do? So if I do this, country properties link.
Maybe it has no results, and so
No, I made an error.
Why are we having the dollar sign?
Oh, it may be because of this.
the point of the break literals is that you avoid using the concatenation this way, right? The plus, and it should be shorter, but in this case, I don't know what happened.
Okay, somehow it was not working. Anyway, so here in the inner HTML, I'm adding anchor tag with href equals to repo.html underscore URL, and the text of the anchor tag is repo.name.
Maybe I didn't get it. I was asking why we had the dollar sign previously.
Dollar.
Yeah.
So it's called template literal, right?
Yeah.
So it's a new feature in JavaScript. It allows you to, so you can have a string like this with back quotes and backticks, and inside the dollar and the curly braces you can put any JavaScript. So like I can write one plus 2, 3. It will return a string 4. So I can say 1 plus 3 equals. So this is, all of them are characters, but it's an expression. So it will evaluate that and it will attach that to a string. So it's much better syntax than this one, what we have here. Maybe we'll learn about that in some next classes.
But it's still a string.
So we are done with this step, and if I click on this, it loads in the same tab. If you want to change it, you can add its target, right? Blank, and it will load in the new tab. Okay, So the next part was that if you click on this, then it should show some details of this repo. And to do that, you have to use, what did you guys use? Search contributors. Can I see someone's code? There is a code for fetching the contributors. So
No, it's not there.
oh, you have contributors URL. So console.log repo. So each one of them have this property contributors URL, and if you go to this page, it has username of everyone who has contributed to this repo. Okay, so new. Yes. So you have to make a new request when user clicks on that repo. Okay. So like he clicks on this or this or this. Yes. So if you look at your HTML, we just have three elements: a button, an input element, and unordered list. So one way is that you can add some custom class here and listen by class. Like you say document.query selected by class name and then add an event listener. Another way is that I can add an event listener here directly because I am creating a new element, so I have a reference to that element. So I can add an event listener that when you click it, I will add a new function. So contributors for repo dot and what do we need to do here?
We have to do it inside the function because the link declared inside the function.
What is declared inside the function?
The link we can use.
So I am adding an event listener here, and for the click event I am calling this function. Oh, I cannot call this. So I am giving it a callback function, and then I should be able to make. What is wrong with this code? This show contributors will just get an URL, so it does not need access to the list element. Page JSON data. So if I click here, I get 3 repos. If I click on any of these, it opens a new page, but it also I also get this, right? So one thing is that I can remove it, this thing, or if you don't want the default behavior to, like if you click on something which is a link, then default behavior is that it will open that link, right? But you can prevent that by using event.prevent default. So if I do this, then it does not open that anymore. It just shows me, it just makes an API call for, and once you have the data, you can show it on the page. I don't know what else to do. Very boring thing. Solving assignment. Test list. So all of them are going to be contributors, right? So I can iterate over them. Function, no, for loop. Let I equals 0, I less than dot length, I plus plus.
I think you expect const contributors when you get the URL that you want. Yeah? Or something.
1 minute. And child. I don't know what it is, it will work or not. What are you saying?
Well, just that you got the const for this, you're right that this const, you forgot the const and then
Okay. So this is the, so I should have access to this element, and then all of them are users, right? But this code is not working. Append child on node, parameter 1 is not of type node. Oh, li.
see user login.
I will just log what we have here.
Okay.
Oh, it's login. And where is the name? You don't.
Just
Login. and we also have avatar URL. Okay. What was I going to do?
Because it is
Anyway, so if you click here, it shows you the contributors, right? And if you can do the styling so that it appears, this list appears on the left side and this appears on the right side. You can add image tag with avatar of everyone, which will look very fancy like what he did. Where is your homework?
This.
This one, right? Yeah. So this one will also have similar code, whatever we did today. Okay. Questions? In the next class, I want all of you to do the homework. At least try and submit the code, whatever you have written.
Can you put your code on Slack?
Yes, I will just put it on GitHub.
Just the part where we have to say like if the user wrote something wrong or just
So if you type something wrong and you don't get a result, right? That I have not handled here. So if I like go, yes. So if you go and type, it will not show anything. But you want the user to know that they have typed something wrong. So here you can check the, like once you get the data from the server, you can check if what is the length of the search results. It gives you total count in the response. So if I just log data, it says total count equals 0. And if I don't type anything here, then it loads everything. So these are two extreme cases for you, which you need to implement some code. So for empty string, you can handle it here. So what if I just go and type, press spacebar and don't type any text? What will I get? It will still go and fetch for empty string. But if you are implementing a search, you should handle all these cases also. Okay, that I will leave to you because we need to teach the next topic also. So we will take a break and then we will continue. This time it's possible.